Tell me if you've heard this story before. Connor Hellebuyck dominates his way all throughout the year, being one of the critical reasons why the Jets not just make the playoffs, but have major success. Then the playoffs roll around and he looks like a Belarusian junior league third-string goaltender. But that is the reality that we are facing today. Connor Hellebuyck has had a horrendous start to the NHL playoffs and now has gotten pulled in back-to-back playoff games. But we need to talk about Connor Hellebuyck right now, the problems that he is facing in the first round throughout all the last few seasons, what the problem may be, and what his legacy might be if he chokes away another first round. So make sure you watch till the end as we go through all the details and all of the playoff talk here, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the year, presented by BetUS TV. Now, going back to my previous playoff predictions right before the playoffs began, I had a couple of hot takes in that one, but one of my biggest was that the St. Louis Blues would beat the Jets in a tight 7-game series. I thought it was going to be an intense one, but I didn't think the Blues were a team to be messed with. They had been so good in the second half and one of the hottest teams in the league. Obviously, the Jets were also one of the hottest teams in the league, still having a dominant regular season, but the Blues had a special bit of magic, really, that they haven't had since 2019. And the conversation always comes up in the first round when we talk about the Winnipeg Jets in Connor Hellebuyck, because even though I would say he started out his career pretty good in the playoffs, after those first couple of seasons, things have not gone his way. Really, ever since 2021, Hellebuyck has been a subpar goaltender in the playoffs. Not just an average one, not just an okay one, but a net negative for this Jets team, and it's one of the critical reasons why they haven't been able to make it past the first round. You just look at the difference, and it's pretty eye-opening. You can see just how solid he was in his first 4 playoff berths, always having an above 900 save percentage, especially in his first playoff appearance, getting a 922, and his last a 931. There really wasn't much of a consistent problem there. You see his last 2 playoffs before this season, an 886 save percentage, and last year above a 5 goals against average, an 870 save percentage, just definitively not good enough. And what was that first round that had Hellebuyck putting up his worst goals against average, his worst save percentage in the playoffs? It was that first round series versus the Colorado Avalanche. And what did they do? They fired shots from the point. They got traffic in front, making Hellebuyck's life as difficult as humanly possible. When he had eyes on the puck, it was a completely different scenario. But with the Avs, they did such a good job creating chaos, getting in front of the net, making life difficult. And that's exactly what really propelled the Avs past the first round there. The blueprint from that point on was pretty clear. Create deflections, create chaos. It's a lot easier said than done with this Jets defense having very few holes, but I mean, this playoff series has been a little bit of a difference maker. But this series isn't even at last year's level so far. Even though that series went 5 games, you look at Hellebuyck's performance specifically, and through 4 games, even though the goals against average isn't as high, he has an 817 save percentage, far below where he was even at last year's series, which was a major problem already. One playoff run that's bad for an elite goaltender, I think that's something to excuse. 2, I think it becomes a little bit of a concern. 3 straight years is a massive problem, especially when you consider that regular season-wise, I don't think there's been any goaltender even close to Hellebuyck over the past 3 seasons. When you compare it to the regular season statistics, a 920 save percentage back in 2023, a 921 save percentage in 2024, a 925 save percentage this year, in terms of value and consistency for their team, very few goaltenders have gone on the type of run that Hellebuyck has gone over the last 3 seasons. But again, the asterisk is that that is just regular season, because anything beyond that has been a complete failure. As Shauna points out, the Blues are doing a really good job of making life difficult for Hellebuyck, traffic in front screening him, tips deflections from point shots. He has to be better, but so does their defense in limiting some of those quality chances. And I think that is something worth considering, that the Jets defense hasn't been at that top end level that you want to see. There has been some good performances, but the consistency just hasn't been there. But that's why I was confident in the Blues being at least competitive and close in this series, because out of all these teams that, especially in the Western Conference, could match up to a team like the Jets in terms of intensity, in terms of physicality on the boards, in terms of getting pucks from the point to the net, creating deflections, creating screens, there's very few teams I think are set up to do that more effectively than the St. Louis Blues and what they've done in the second half. They are such a more harder team to play against than they were in the first half. They have so much more physicality to them, so much more energy. And I think that's the exact type of style you need to play against this Jets team, because it seems to work out almost every single time. But even if the Jets are to go and win in this series, their holes and their weaknesses have been very clearly exposed. And I think, again, the Blues are very well set up here with the momentum they have to win this series, to get it done and continue exposing them. The Blues have been such a mature team in this series, I feel like, such a consistent one, especially as the series has gone on. And again, these problems of physicality that St. Louis brings so consistently, that's something the Jets really have to worry about, especially with Hellebuyck and how he struggles with that. Because as of right now, it is not working. As TSN says, 11 goals over 43 shots over the past 2 games, and that has led to Hellebuyck being pulled twice. And it takes a lot, I would say, for Hellebuyck especially to get pulled in playoff games for the Jets to actually feel like they have a better chance without Hellebuyck in the net than with him. But that's what we've seen in back-to-back games here. And it's been a short series, only 4 games. So half of the games so far, Hellebuyck hasn't even played in all of them, which I think is pretty unfortunate. But honestly, I can't even really blame the Winnipeg Jets that much, because you look at the goal save of expected league-wide in the playoffs so far, and there hasn't even been any goaltender close to how bad Connor Hellebuyck has been. You look at it, and the expected goals against is around 8. He has allowed 7 more goals than expected in this series so far, which over the course of just 4 games is exponential. Yes, I do think the defense hasn't been perfect for this Winnipeg Jets team, but I think they have put him in at least a position to try to succeed. In Hellebuyck's case, it just has not been there, and the thorough consistency or lack thereof throughout this series for him has been a major problem already. I think for this Jets team, it is miraculous that Hellebuyck is playing this bad, yet this series is still tied. So that's maybe something to have some hope in, but on the contrary, you also have to worry about Hellebuyck continuing these struggles. But in my case, I'd argue the Blues gotten much better throughout the course of this series, really exposing those flaws in Hellebuyck's game, being more consistent in those screens, in those deflections, in those tighter shots, and making things more difficult. That's something the Blues gotten better at every single game, and if they continue to get better at it, the Jets are toast. Now, after yesterday's loss, TNT put out a pretty brutal graphic, and I think this really just shows the problem that we're facing here with Hellebuyck. Over the last 13 games, these are the results of Hellebuyck's playoff games. And as you can see, only 3 games out of those 13 games, the Hellebuyck has allowed less than 4 goals. You look at the rest of them, you have goals against up in the 6s, up in the 5s, pretty consistently. And that is a major problem. And in only 3 of those games has he even won in those games too. So for the Jets and their whole strategy, their whole situation here, they're dead in the water if they can't figure this thing out. It's something that also has been brought up in the past, but I do think is worth mentioning that the mental load also might be a major factor here. I'm a little bit more hesitant to say that this is absolutely 110% the case, because again, he has had some good playoffs in the past, and this year's 4 Nations, when he had a ton of pressure on him, he still looked pretty good. But maybe it is just a mental block recently with the playoffs themselves, actually getting ready for it and being in that moment, being actually confident in your skill set. It's crazy to think about that a goalie like that might even actually have an issue, because he has been such a dominant goaltender in the past. But maybe that is just the case, that when the playoffs come around, things are different and he just can't handle that consistently. One issue that I think might need to be talked about a little bit more as well is just the workload physically that Hellebuyck has had to handle. I think over the last 3 seasons, nobody has even come close to Hellebuyck in terms of the games played. I think it's at 289, which I think is like 10 more or something compared to like UC Saros, and a lot more compared to really the rest of the NHL. In terms of goaltenders in the playoffs this year, Hellebuyck is clear ahead in the games played, the pure workload, and I think that is something to consider, especially this season when Hellebuyck had no rest at the All-Star break. He is somebody that played consistently at the 4 Nations. Hellebuyck really hasn't gotten much of an opportunity to breathe whatsoever throughout this year, and that might also be affecting him too. He might just not have the rest that he's truly needed, and that is something I think the Jets might need to address if the playoff concerns continue. I thought they had some pretty good goaltending this season. A player like Eric Comrie, I think, was actually pretty good as a backup, but I think as the Jets at some point just need to say no to Hellebuyck and say, hey man, we need to play you less than 60 games next year, or else you might not be ready, and you just need to accept that fact. That at least I think is playing a part here. Again, I think it is a mixture of the physical and the mental load that is just making things so much more difficult than they need to be for Hellebuyck. And that is, I think, a pretty sad situation to be in. I understand what might be going on, especially after so much dominance in the regular season. For him especially, it might not feel like things even matter until the playoffs, and he might be putting that unbelievable expectation on his shoulders to carry this Jets team to the promised land. I can see where those expectations might have him be falling flat, and I do feel for him in those spots. But at a certain point, man, you need to come up in the playoffs. At a certain point, you just need to play well, and there's really no ifs and buts about it. There's no excuses at that point for somebody that has been definitively the best regular season goaltender of the last few seasons. From everything I've heard, Connor Hellebuyck is just an absolutely amazing person, and I am really wishing that he's able to turn this page and actually get himself going, get that confidence back, because it seems to be a major problem consistently in the playoffs. I just hope that he's able to turn that page, though, man, because I don't want to see this happen to somebody that is so obviously talented, so obviously good, but just can't seem to put it all together. I'm hoping that ends up changing, that he is able to turn this page, and in the second half of this series is able to become a major reason why the Jets bounce back. But as of right now, there's still a lot of issues to correct. It's put up or shut up time, man, and I think over these next 2 or potentially 3 games, we are really going to see what Connor Hellebuyck is made of. Will he sink or swim? We're going to have to find out here. Now, before we go, today's video is sponsored by BetUS TV, the place to make all your hockey picks and sports picks all throughout this season, whether it be on the NHL, NBA playoffs, whether you want to make your Stanley Cup predictions on a specific team, or you just want to make picks on daily NHL games. BetUS TV is the place to do so, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. But that is it for me today, folks, and a quick little discussion on Hellebuyck and what has happened up to this point. Hopefully you guys did enjoy and were entertained. If you were, make sure that like button, hit that subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more hockey videos just like this all throughout the year. And of course, I want to know down in the comments down below, what is your view on Hellebuyck up to this point? Is he on fraud watch? Is he still an elite goaltender? Is he still somebody you have hope in turning that page? And what do you see happening over the course of the second half of this first round series? Let me know all your thoughts. Of course, share the video for all the hockey fans you guys know online. Click on this card for all of my playoff talk right on playlist. And I will see you in the next one. Have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.